Welcome to this edition of Abled and On Air, the one and only program that focuses on the needs, concerns, and achievements of the differently able. I've always been your host, Lawrence Seiler.
Arlene Seiler.
And on this program today, coming up on this edition, we focus on what if you need support? How do we get those supports if we're special needs? From everything from housing to employment. With us to discuss this and very many issues like this is Executive Director Joshua Smith of Green Mountain Support Services. Welcome.
Thank you very much,
Abled and
Lawrence.
On Air.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Arlene, thank you.
Thank you. What are the missions and goals of Green Mountain Support Service?
Well, first, I'd like to say thank you for inviting me onto the program. It was very nice of you. And also, I wanted to thank you for helping us out on our third annual Cerebral Palsy Conference. Abled On Air was there and also did a breakout session that was very well. We had good feedback from, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And so, what we do, what does Green Mountain Support Services do? So ultimately, one of the things that, and I'm sure you've talked about it before when you've had, Monica on, you had Mary Moulton on, you've had some other people on that were part of this, this agency system. Yep. And we were formed, and to talk about Green Mountain Support Services, I kind of have to talk about the closing of Brandon Training School and how all that happened. So, one of the things that we talk about in Vermont is that we are, we're an innovative and we're a strong state that is extremely progressive culturally speaking. And one of the things that we've done that not a lot of people talk about is that Vermont was the first state to close down, to completely and utterly deinstitutionalize. There's only 11 states in the country right now that have completely deinstitutionalized.
Since we're talking about deinstitutionalization, what, in your opinion, what is the definition so our viewers can know what deinstitutionalization really means?
So basically, is that what that entails is that you, based off of somebody's disability, you are segregated from the rest of society.
Look at me. Well,
yeah. So you're segregated from the rest of society, and what that and Brandon Training School was closed in 1993. So we've about 25 years since we actually. So it's only been 25 years that we deinstitutionalized. What that means is that it doesn't matter if you have red hair, you wear hearing aids, you wear glasses, or you have an intellectual disability. You deserve to be a part of your own community. That we are only stronger as Vermont when everybody has the same accessibility to everything else. Your local hardware store, your local coffee shop, your grocery store, and your local churches and synagogues and whatnot. So everybody is able to access and be a part of that community. So Vermont was the first state to do that. We said, you know what, it doesn't matter that you have a disability. You deserve to know your neighbors. You deserve to be treated like everybody else.
Are there any states that are still states in the union that are having people in institutions still?
There's 39. 39 states. There's only 11 states that have deinstitutionalized. So there's still a lot that when you're as young as 6 months old, you get incarcerated because you have a disability. At 6 months, that's still happening today in the United States. So for us in Vermont, this is not a big deal. Like
It is a big deal.
No, it's not a big deal to have a disability here. Like it's one of those things where it's, as I say, it's just as different as having red hair or wearing glasses or anything else. So
okay. Now, what has been your experience in the field of special needs?
Well, I'm a native Vermonter. I'd be clear that I'm an 8th generation Vermonter, and so I've been conceived, born, and raised in Vermont, and I only remember one of those, and one of the so
being a ham again.
Yeah. So one of my things is that after I left Vermont for about 15 years, I worked overseas for the Peace Corps and Doctors Without Borders and other places like that, relief institutions. relief agencies. And so it was a natural fit for me to come back here and to do a lot of advocacy and do a lot of work for and education and for people that aren't treated generically as the same as everybody else. So it was, and being in Vermont, coming back home to Vermont was a natural fit for me, culturally speaking. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So being now at the conference,
Yeah.
there was booths everywhere, and there were a lot of organizations, and one of the things that you're great with that I've noticed, you've spoken to me about people that work in the trenches of people with special needs,
Yeah.
the DSPs, direct care professionals.
Yeah.
How important is it to have really great staff when you're dealing with, because you're an executive director?
Yeah.
How important is it when you have staff that's trained
Yeah.
to work with
Yeah.
special needs? Because many oftentimes you hear in the news, bus matrons hurting people with special needs.
Recently, a police officer in my guy out of
A person in a wheelchair in
right.
prison, and things that you hear
Yeah.
about
And
in the
shooting
news, shootings.
in
How are you going to
Chicago,
shoot
but
people with
how
special
you
needs?
shoot a autistic kid? He is unarmed, he's unarmed,
Yeah.
and this is in Chicago. How the heck is he gonna shoot a kid?
So what
and
is your
not-
opinion on those issues?
So it's a good point, and I would say that the main piece of that is that when you have an integrated society where everybody is a part of that, it becomes normal to see someone with autism. It becomes normal to see someone in a wheelchair. If the more you pull people away that are different, the more you have this them mentality instead of a we mentality. So the more we have people trained and working together with people with that have hearing issues, that have sight issues, that have mobility issues, and that have like an intellectual disability. It doesn't matter. Everybody should still be a part of their own community. The more you see people with different backgrounds and different experiences and different abilities, the more you put them together in one community, it becomes normal. So you see these issues. Is that
Why
when
is
you
there still prejudice, though? It shouldn't be.
Well, it shouldn't be, but here's the thing. When I said there's 39 states that's still institutionalized, you still have these people away from society.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest piece. And I say you bring up the point about training. A really good friend of mine said in a meeting one day when a group of us agencies we gather together on a monthly basis, and the concept of training comes up, and they said, the retention rate is so low, the turnover rate is so high.
Yeah.
We have to keep training people, and then one person says it costs too much. It costs too much to train people, and it says there's it's bad. You people come in and you train them, and then they leave, and then a really good friend of mine says it could be worse. You couldn't train them and they stay.
Oh.
That's worse.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah,
you
not
never
having
you never assume that
appropriate staff.
exactly. You never assume that you're going to hire someone and they're going to leave. When you hire someone, you plan on them staying for 10, 12, 15, 20 years. If you go under the expectation that they're going to leave, then you're going to treat your staff differently.
As far as staff, people obviously don't make $1 million.
Yeah.
They stay in it because it's a great field. It's an up-and-coming field. It's within the nursing field because you're
Yeah.
taking care of people. What is your opinion on higher wages for people that work in the field of disabilities?
So higher wages is a thing, is definitely a big thing. When we meet with other DSPs, direct support professionals, from other states, they get paid minimum wage. You got some people get paid $7.25 an hour.
Still?
Yeah, that's the federal minimum wage, is $7.25, and some of those will keep that federal minimum wage.
Yeah.
The work you do, by far, should not be something that you should not go hungry if you work full time, flat out. And to the other, so I would say that the pay is, Vermont passed a law which was perfect, that they're able to pay our direct support professionals $14 an hour. You know, starting pay, which is great. It's
Yeah.
still not enough. But to that message, in Canada has, the work they do is, it's the equivalent of state employees. They get paid close to $20 an hour, and you get, in Canada, you have your medical benefits are a lot different and better there. But the turnover is still high. So you ask yourself, if they're getting
Explain
paid
what
more,
that means.
their turnover, meaning people still quit at the same amount of rate as they do here.
Yeah.
So you ask yourself, if they get paid $20 an hour and they're still quitting at the same rate as here, then what's the issue? The issue is your direct support professionals, your shared living providers, the people that do this frontline work, need to be treated with dignity and respect that they deserve. If they get treated with dignity and respect and know that they're on the same level as everybody else in that team that supports a person with disabilities, they're going to stay because they're treated, they're truly appreciated. So if you increase that true appreciation to your staff and you give them that dignity and respect and put them in the same level and sitting at the same table as everybody else, they're going to stay. So if they get paid really well, perfect. If they get treated with the same appreciation and dignity and respect as everybody else on the team, it doesn't matter if you have a master's degree. It doesn't matter if you have a PhD. It doesn't matter if you have a high school education. If you're there sitting at the table, you belong at that table. So getting paid more is great. Getting treated with a level of expectation and appreciation is even better.
You bring up great points.
Yeah.
So, getting back to Gray Mountain
Yeah.
Support Services, what services do you guys provide?
Good question. We are, how Vermont is set up is they have a system where they have a designated agency system. And the designated agency system is, for instance, you have Washington County Mental Health here.
Yeah.
You got Howard Center in Chittenden County. You got Northeast Kingdom Human Services in the Northeast Kingdom. These are the designated agencies. These are the agencies they're designated to do the intake, and they're designated to provide the services once the doors open. Green Mountain Support Services, we're a specialty service agency, and there's 6 of us in the state. The specialty service agencies.
There's only 6 organizations within the state
that are specialty service agencies.
Oh, okay.
You have the designated agencies. There's 11 of those.
Okay.
So those are your default designated agencies.
Yes.
They provide mental health services, developmental services, any of the crises. They're the ones that do that. The specialty service agencies, which Green Mountain Support Service is one of them, we're designated to work statewide, and we specialize in certain things. So to answer your question, Lawrence, what do we specialize in? We specialize in that. We work with we work in the developmental services. We also work with people with traumatic brain injuries, and we also work with.
And there's another TBI agency that I know of.
There's a few. There's Pride. There's Choice. There's Robin Hill Farm. There's a few of them that are out there too that do that. And we also work with the elder care services as well. And the piece that I talk about with the elder care services is that I say that we still institutionalize a portion of our population and we don't even bat an eye. That's the elderly.
Yeah.
The elderly are still segregated and institutionalized today. Those are nursing homes. And we
That's a big problem.
so here's the thing is that like what we did where we deinstitutionalized, we closed down a branding training school in '93, that it's actually in the title. Unless you need 24-hour care nursing, you shouldn't be in a nursing home. So you deserve to be a part of your community, and we also have services like that are very similar to what we do that we work with people with intellectual disabilities. We have group
homes?
We don't do group homes. That's still
No group homes in the whole state.
No, we don't. Green
Oh.
Mountain Support Services doesn't.
Okay.
That's our philosophy is that you want individualized services and you want individualized services and supports. So what we do is that we contract out with we find high quality people that are willing to open up their homes to have somebody be a roommate with them and live with them, and that's what we provide for our elder care services as well. You don't need to be in a nursing home. You don't need to
If
be
you
in
need those services,
unless you need it.
does Green Mountain Support Services help? If a person needs a nursing care facility,
Yeah.
would you guys help with those services?
We would transition them into something what they absolutely need. So that's that piece is that do you actually need 24-hour care nursing? If you don't, you should be a part of your community as well. We would help you move into somebody else's home. They would provide that one-on-one service with you, take you out to the hardware store, help you out to go fishing every day if you want to, and just go out and hang out with your buddies at McDonald's and drink coffee and complain about the world today or talk about what's all these kids on their iPhones. The point is that we're able to provide that individualized support that you're not going to get in an institutional setting.
Okay.
So
Do you find? Do you want to ask a question? Go ahead. You want to ask a question? Go ahead.
Okay. What kind of service did you offer people with special needs?
Like real in
Right.
the meat of stuff.
So what we do is that we provide, services that are community-based. So we will help you find that. What you do is we will help you find a home that matches your style of life. And what we would do is then within that atmosphere, we would also provide you if you needed any specific community-based services. So there's a difference between working with somebody in their 20s or working with someone in their 60s. Working for someone in their 20s, we provide a level of, you still get that safe home atmosphere,
Yeah.
but then again, our direct support professionals provide, a level of mentorship and, help you to, what are some of the culturally appropriate things to say and whatnot in there. If you're working with somebody in their 60s and 70s, you're pretty much set in your ways. You don't need someone in their 20s telling you how to live. You're like, I know what to do. It's like, so, you might need some physical assistance or you might need some transportation assistance and that stuff to have you access the community. But a lot of it is basically what we believe in as an agency is that we are only we're stronger when we have everybody has the ability and desire to be a part of their community. We all know that one, that 80-year-old farmer who doesn't want to leave his house. That's his decision. But the point is installing that type of life on someone in their 20s who wants to access the community, access their neighborhood, gets to have that ability, and that's what we provide. So
What's the pros and cons with? Do you think that there's pros and cons? I'm sure there's pros and cons to
Yeah.
everything. But is there pros and cons to working in the field of special needs? Yes, no.
pros and cons in working in our field.
Yeah.
If any, I would say that I could start with the cons. Is that it's a type of work that people, the general public, don't understand. There's limited.
And that's what we're trying to do within
Right.
this show. We're trying to
Yeah.
educate.
It's important for us, and we own that too, as Green Mountain Support Services, and as all of us agencies. We own the fact that we need to start doing more education and advocacy on what type of work, what type of work we do in the community, and what type of work we do on behalf of other Vermonters. And with that said. That's something that's a con, is that there's a lack of general understanding on what it is, and there's a lack of understanding on how actually, compared to an institutional setting, the cost of providing services, individualized services we provide, dwarfs the cost of if it was an institution. So-
What do you mean by dwarf in this case?
So I would say, hypothetically speaking, if you compare us to an institution in, name another state, I don't know, Colorado, Kansas, Massachusetts, New York.
Well, New York, they don't have institutions anymore.
They have some people can choose to.
Yeah.
But the cost of running an entire campus, the infrastructure of running an entire campus, and then having all those people hired and everything, the cost of per person to run that is, you're talking about $100,000 to $150,000 per person. Where in our situation here, it's a fifth of that or a third of that cost.
Yeah.
So that's the difference, is that we provide individualized supports for people, but we also provide, it's also from an economic perspective, it's cheaper. Plus, the people we work with, that we help assist to be a part of their neighborhood, is working and actually becoming taxpayers. You have people that have full-time jobs that they wouldn't if you locked them away and turned them into a them instead of a we. And I'll give you another point too, is that when I did work overseas, I was in East Africa, I was in West Africa, I was in Southern Africa, I worked in Northern Africa, I worked in parts of Asia, I was in Pakistan and the Philippines, and in my times, I come there and people tell I don't belong there because I'm American, so they would want to try to find a way to fit me into their societal structure. So there's questions they would ask. Depending on the country, they would either ask you, what tribe are you from? What religion are you? What's your father's name? These are some of the questions they would ask you to kind of define.
In the Jewish religion, it's the same thing. Because if, for example, in the Jewish faith, if you go to, it's called Aliyah. If you want to live in Israel, they ask you right away, who's your mother? Who's your? Because if your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish. But they ask you all kind of questions.
Well,
in order to fit in.
Right. And here, what we do so we have a similar question that we ask. Whether you go to like a 4th of July barbecue, or you go to a friend's party and you meet new people, they'll ask you here in Vermont, they'll ask you, what do you do for work? They'll ask you, they say, what do you do for work? That is our version of other countries' question of what is your value in society. So having a job doesn't, having a job and making money on it is great. You make money and you're doing something. But the point is that we
suppose if you don't make money on something, but you really enjoy doing it.
It's a passion. It's a hobby. It's a calling. We'd call it something else. But the piece of it is that when you have a job, no matter what your background or disability is that when you're working, you're a part of something bigger than yourself. So that there's a statistic that shows that human rights issues like crimes that happen against people with disabilities that are filled by adult protective services and whatnot.
Which is another show entirely.
So what it shows is that, but this is the interesting thing, is that 5%, it's between 5 to 7% of the reports happen in the workplace.
In terms of abuse of people with disabilities and or elderly.
That happen. It's between 5 to 7% of them happen in the workplace.
Why? What? Okay, since you said that, why? Okay, I mean, obviously a nurse or a direct care worker shouldn't be hitting a person with a disability.
Right.
Why is that?
Well, let me just make that comparison. If it's 5 to 7% happen in the workplace, that means 93 to 95% of it happens in the community of those reports. So what that means is that when you're actually a part of you're in a work site, people don't see your disability more. You're part of the team. You have the same name tag as us. You see a lot of times when you might have a customer, someone at a grocery store, kind of insinuate or make fun of somebody with that's different than them. 9 times out of 10, another colleague in that store will come up and stick up for that person or
Yeah,
confront the customer.
like they've done it on television. They've done scenarios.
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
So that's why having a job it's good to make money, but it's not about the money. What it is that you're part of something bigger than yourself.
A lot
You're
of people
part
with
a
special needs
community.
want to work and they want to be part of society. Okay, even if it's something as minute as bagging groceries,
Yeah.
they're still part of society.
They're wearing the same shirt. They got the same type of name tag, and 9 times out of 10, their coworkers will always stick up.
Look
for
at the
them.
guy from. I'm bringing
Yeah.
this up as a part of it. Look at the guy from one of the people from Cosby Show.
Yeah.
From the Cosby Show, he was bagging groceries at Trader Joe's
Yeah.
because he needed a job,
Yeah.
not because he was a celebrity, but because he,
Yeah.
we're all part of society,
Yep. Yep.
and we have to be treated as such.
Absolutely. And like I said, it has nothing. And the point, another thing that Greenmount Support Services do is that we do a thing that's called a one-page profile.
Yeah.
That every time we have our employees do it, and actually, what it is that it defines
Calls
it.
an ISP or is it
No. It's just a page that says, who I am, what people like about me, they have these things. So you're looking at the person. We provide services to people. We don't provide services for diagnoses. So so that's the thing, is that, and we don't, for us, is that people are people, and we do the best to support that person in what they want to do. And we do informed decision making, we do supported decision making, we help them make the decisions, but and when it comes down to it is that when you talk about like an intellectual disability and you talk about the difference between intelligence and wisdom. Intelligence is it's like you can go on to talk about there's different types of, there's an IQ, there's an EQ, there's a PQ, there's all types of ways, but ultimately is that it's not our job to fix people. That's no one's broken, and that's the one thing I remember is like one of my nurse colleagues in my previous job. We were hiring a new nurse, and one of the nurses in the interview talks about what talks about patients, and my nurse said that I worked with goes, they're not patients, they're not sick, they're people. And when you're in a hospital, you're a patient. But here in this community services, you're not a patient, you're a person, because you're not
in
sick.
the Holocaust, for example, they put
Yeah.
numbers on everybody.
Yeah.
Here, you're a person.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's ultimately is that point is that it's, and I would talk to people about saying is that our job is to make sure that we provide genuine experiences for people to let them do what they want to do. Because I would say, you know what, have you ever, and I would bring this up into some trainings, and I would say, and a degree doesn't mean nothing. I said, how many of you have actually sat in a meeting with someone with a PhD or a master's degree, and as they left the room, you said, you know what, that is the dumbest smart person I ever met. Like, because it's like these people, like, you think you know, but you don't. Mm-hmm. And how many of those people that you know who, there's that old-timey farmer that's up there in, in northern Vermont someplace who is ashamed that he never finished the 3rd grade, but you still go to him because he has the best advice. Intelligence has nothing to do with wisdom. Wisdom is about getting experiences. And we can control, the one thing that we can control as an agency is the ability to make sure we are all able to create, to promote and facilitate experiences. And the more you experience, the more wisdom you have. The more wisdom you have, the better the stories are. The more the stories you tell, the more connected you are to people. The more connected you are to people, the more you're going to be missed when you're gone. And then ultimately, and we say this, that our job as Greenmount Support Services, our job is that at the end of somebody's life, more natural supports come to their funeral than paid supports. The point is that our job as humans is to make connections and to be missed. And if we're not allowing that to happen, we failed as an agency and we failed as a system.
What what are the misconceptions around people with special needs when you first meet them?
I think it's the misconceptions you have is it's the same thing as your misconceptions you have with any other stereotype. Like if I see someone, if you have a stereotype of someone with a disability, you're going to assume you're going to create an assumption about that person. It's the same thing like if you meet someone from, if you meet someone from a different country, or you meet someone with a different ethnic background, that we are predetermined to make those decisions based off of the fact of what we know about that genre of stereotype. And so I think that's the biggest thing that I think I will personally always face, that I think we will all, to be honest, will always face, is that we continuously have to struggle to fight against our preconceived notions of stereotypes, whether it be from people from different countries, different backgrounds, different religious backgrounds, different political affiliations. These are the things that we have to we consistently have to get over. So I would take in the issue about disabilities as that same thing, and as an agency who promotes the inclusion of everyone. Primarily, our job as Green Mountain Support Services is to continue that education and continue that that normalization that people are people.
Okay. Television shows like The Good Doctor and so many others now on television. How, in your opinion, how does the media perceive both negative, because this is what I spoke about in my talk, negative and positive within the, how does television view people with special needs?
I would say that this is an opportunity that this gives us consistently an opportunity and a stage to have those discussions. It's the same thing when you had who was it? I Love Lucy or something, where they talked about the idea of intimacy. They always had beds in two separate.
Put the beds apart.
But once you put the beds together, that created the conversation. It's the same thing when you have when you have someone from a different cultural background, or someone from a different country, or that are becoming a star in a show. It creates the conversation to make it normal. So what I would love to see is that we own this moment now in media to help facilitate the conversations. When you hear people talking about The Good Doctor or the show Speechless or all these other shows that they put somebody in.
The Netflix, there's one about autism on Netflix. I forget the name of it.
Yeah, we can own those conversations. We can facilitate it. It doesn't necessarily mean we can walk up to strangers on the street and says, "Do you see The Good Doctor? What do you think about autism?" No, it's like when you hear people talking about it, that gives you permission.
No, but what do you think about
There's one show, I forgot.
no, but what do you think about a non-disabled?
What is a person with, what's the name of that show? Teenage something.
Oh, I'm not sure if that one's off air or not.
Yeah, it's like someone with special needs there, and he's like, trying to interact with all the non-special needs,
Yeah. So, what is your
I forgot
opinion
the name
on
of the show.
what a non-disabled, like The Good Doctor?
Yeah.
He's not autistic. He's playing autistic.
Playing autistic.
What is your opinion on that?
It would be, and to be fair, since I don't have a disability, I don't feel comfortable making a statement on that. But I know that I would say that it's, you always see it, it's the equivalent of, when someone who is, a Caucasian, a straight white American male playing a different part of a character that is from a different background. It's the same conversations, and I always
think there should be more disabled actors playing parts?
So I'll give you an example. That's a good question. Is that if you notice, there is actually one movie that came out in '85, I believe, or '86. It was called Mac and Me.
Yeah.
Do you remember Mac and Me?
I remember that.
Yeah.
That was, so they talked about, like, the Rotten Tomatoes gave it, like, it's one of the lowest rated movies ever. But the one thing it said that it did that no other movie ever did since then, other than being a complete ripoff of E.T., but that's beside the point. The main character in there was a boy in a wheelchair.
Ah.
And it was never brought up. No one even cared he was in a wheelchair. It was normal. There was never a thing about him being in a wheelchair. They never talked about him being in a wheelchair. He was just an actor. They could have picked that movie did not rely anything about the main actor being in a wheelchair. It actually wasn't in the script. The kid was a good actor
Yeah.
who happened to be in a wheelchair. It didn't matter. So that was one thing that was back in '85. So
That's before the
Over-
Americans with Disabilities Act.
that was over 30 years ago that movie came out. And so a lot of people with disabilities thought, this is it. This is our moment. Now, it doesn't matter if you're in a wheelchair. It doesn't matter what your disability is. You can still be cast in any role. But it didn't happen. So that's one thing, is that Mac and Me was a blip in a radar that shouldn't just be a blip. It should be that it doesn't matter if you're blind. It doesn't matter if you have heart, any type of disability. That if you can play the role, it shouldn't. That your physical appearance or what, if you have any type of shouldn't define.
What are the future goals around Green Mountain Support Services? What are you guys planning to do? I mean, you guys have done wonderful things.
Yeah.
You guys had that wonderful conference that
Yeah.
we were a part of. So now, what is the future goals of Green Mountain Support Services?
Well, the benefit of being a specialty service agency is that we can be extremely mission driven. So, and our mission is that it's our title. It's like we empower our neighbors with disabilities to be at home in the community. So we focus on neighbors, we focus on community, we focus on the fact that we don't do segregated settings, we don't do congregate settings. We believe that
What's a congregate setting?
a congregate setting is like, okay, let's put everybody with a disability, like a sheltered workshop. Let's put everybody.
Oh, that's another, yeah.
Yeah, let's put everybody with a disability in together. So one point that we do is that we don't have, the
What's
people.
a sheltered workshop before you get into that?
A sheltered workshop is where you would basically sequester everybody with a disability into an area to just do certain rote, things like either making coat hangers or hat racks or something like that, and they're only surrounded by other people with disabilities. So that's not how you might have that whole room with somebody who wants to get a job at a grocery store. You might have another guy who loves computers. The only reason why you're putting them all together in the same room is because they all have disabilities, and
it's called piecework.
it's it could be. I'm not familiar with that phrase, but yeah, it's that sheltered workshop setting, which is completely and utterly inappropriate because you're putting people together based off of their disability and not based off of
What they can.
what they can provide for their neighbors and the rest of the rest of the town they live in. So yeah.
All right. So you've worked in the field of special needs. Are you going to continue? Obviously, you're going to continue the mission of Green Mountain Support Services. What is one message that you can give our viewers at home for those that want to work in the field of special needs?
So I would say that it's that ultimately is that you want to find. Nowadays, people are mission driven. It's that we have to work hard as employers to make people feel committed to an ideology. People can quit on a whim. It's easy to, it's like, I don't like this place. And like, especially when we're working with like the people for me, I like, Gen Xers and your millennials, and that you feel as though that unless I feel as though that this agency is heading in a direction that I feel comfortable with, I'm going to stay. And that's ultimately what we feel, is that as an agency, we believe, and we're, as I say, very truly mission driven, that if we have some guardians who might say, you know what, I don't want the person I don't want my uncle or child to be a part of the community because they're going to get made fun of. And our response as Green Mountain Support Services is like, we're not the agency for you then, I'm sorry. Because we believe everybody needs to be together.
Yeah.
And we believe that we focus on what gifts people can bring, and not
Because
what,
Martin Luther King, for example,
yeah,
worked on, several things. The Poor People's Campaign, desegregating people.
yeah,
he got rid of the bathrooms,
Yep.
whites only,
Yep.
colors only, that
Yep.
type of thing, to get people into the mix of things.
Yep, absolutely, and that's what makes Green Mountain Support Services stand out, is that we're extremely vocal in the idea that people are people, and we will never ever cater to any segregated settings. We will never ever cater to any congregate workshops or any of that stuff. So and it's good, but I would say too, is I would add the note that sometimes like if someone's a cancer survivor, they want to. They experience something very specific that they want to hang out with other people, on a time to actually, they want to hang out with people that understand that. For instance, people with traumatic brain injuries, it's important for them to meet people with other traumatic brain injuries. They need that survivor group to share their story, because not all of us knows that. Not all of us can share that experience. But we give that. So there's certain examples of that where it's not a congregate setting, it's a meeting space. There's a difference between forcing people into activities or having people congregate to meet to talk about an advocacy thing or talk about issues of emotional support as well. So, and we do that. We do that. We have self-advocate groups. We work with our people with traumatic brain injuries and, setting up survivor groups and things like that. And ultimately what we do is that we need to provide, and what we do is we're proud to say is that people connect with people who have the same interests and likes and passions. We have one lady who loves horseback riding.
Yeah, because they have. Does Vermont have? I'm sure Vermont. So you work with, if somebody loves horseback riding?
Yeah.
Do you work with organizations within Vermont? Because I know there's equestrian societies and there's.
So what we would do is that we have there's one farm that actually isn't catered to people with special needs. It has the ability to help people out that need that assistance, but it's open to everybody.
Yeah.
So we have a lady that goes horseback riding with other people that don't have disabilities. So she's hanging out with other people that love horses.
Yeah.
We have another guy we work with that loves rocks. He's the kind of guy who is able to, he can go to any bend in any river in Vermont and find rocks he can sell for $200 a piece on eBay because he knows what to find because he loves rocks. Why the heck would he be hanging out with other people that have a similar diagnosis as him? He has nothing else in common with them. He hangs out. He works now with he does classes at libraries and helps out people with the Department of Agriculture and the Forestry Department.
Wow.
To work with them because he found other people who have a strong passion for geology. So I mean, that's what it's all about.
Now, as far as your, this is the last question.
Yeah.
As far as your employment services,
Yeah.
where have you found people employment? Because
So
employment's important for people.
Yeah,
especially.
absolutely. We have a fantastic employment department, support employment department. We, per capita, we're one of the highest agencies that actually has the most people that we provide services for hired. And we see that we work with over almost 24 different businesses right now. And we do a thing that's called, and we think it's just, it's specific to our part, but we have, we work with people with, they do job carving and say, we can have people do this and this and this and this and help you out with that. But honestly, everyday services, we do job carving all the time. We do jobs for people. For instance, I give you an example, is I have, I have one friend who's an administrative assistant, and she says, you know what, I know nothing about Excel. And, and her boss said, that's fine, we'll find someone else to do Excel for you. That's job carving. For instance, just today, there's a program that we do for mileage. And I walked up to.
What do you mean mileage?
We have a mileage reimbursement program that we plug in instead of writing it all out by hand. I told my my HR colleague, I says, I don't know how to do this, and she goes, I'll do it for you. That's job carving. That part of my job that I should do has been carved away from me for someone else to do it.
Oh,
it's-
so you guys pay people if they have to travel?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's standard in
Uh-huh.
our agency. So I mean, I guess the point I'm making is that job carving isn't specific to supported employment. If you pull back, you talk to anybody in any job, their job has been carved for them too. You might think of somebody in a coffee shop, and you might have a person who says, I can't use the can opener. Someone says, all right, I'll use the can opener for you. Like, just as an example. And you might have
Oh,
somebody
they
else,
have big can openers in restaurants,
or
huge.
something like that. Or you might see somebody who's a dishwasher, and it says, I got Band-Aids on my hands that I can't wash the dishes today, or something like that. And says, all right, I'll do it for you. That's job carving. So job carving isn't specific to supported employment and disability.
But if
things,
somebody,
yeah.
if somebody in your agency, someone that you're helping,
Yeah.
wants to say, come to you, okay, I want to learn how to be a chef, but I know that there's school involved in that, but do you help people with
Yep.
that if they want to work in the restaurant industry?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think we see ourselves as though is that if somebody wants to do something, then that's something that we would absolutely work with them
Knowing
to
the
attain.
risks of certain things,
It's a risk for everybody.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like at the
Yeah.
point, yeah.
But
You don't
some
know
of the
to do something,
research,
somebody else
some
will
of the
help you.
research I've done,
Yeah.
there's a lot of countries
Yeah.
and a lot of places that have restaurants they hire people with special needs.
And I'm 100%. I think that's one of the worst things.
In some other places, you called it a theme restaurant.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because you have everybody with it. Yeah, if they're specifically hiring everybody with a disability, that's their theme, and I guarantee you're sitting there. You have somebody at home going, "Hey, let's go to that disability restaurant where everybody has a disability," but they might not use the word disability. They might use a more derogatory term, and so the point is that restaurant.
So they should hire disabilities and other employees, not just disabilities.
Yeah, but why? It's like the same thing. Let's hire all redheads.
Right.
Let's have all redhead down. Let's hire all blind. Let's have a blind restaurant.
They do in Israel.
Yeah. So, but the point is that then that is you're making it a theme restaurant.
Yeah.
You're exploiting the disability, and you're not exploiting people's. So let me ask you this: if you have everybody there that with a disability that can cook and is good at cooking, why are they there? They should go to other restaurants. If they have the same skill set as everybody else, then yeah, absolutely. That's in a way that's a sheltered workshop. In a way that's like,
Oh, I didn't view it that way.
yeah, you're exploiting somebody's disability.
And some of them work at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Oh yeah.
everybody else.
So
What
yeah,
do you
people with special needs working in just fast food just because they're disabled. Yeah.
But people work at. It's not just disabled people that work at McDonald's. Everybody works at McDonald's.
Yeah.
I have friends that work at McDonald's. So it's
There's no
not.
shame of it.
No, not at all.
Some of them work at Wendy's.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of
Yes.
Abled and On Air. Before we end this edition of Abled and On Air, I just want to say this program today is in memory of Lucy Torres of the Bronx. Miss Lucy Torres of the Bronx recently passed away of heart failure. Miss Torres and other members of her family continue to work in the field helping those with special needs in the community, they started as DSPs and now they're managers in the field of special needs. Ms. Torres spent her life working for the RAIN organization of the Bronx and Catholic Guardian Society, part of Catholic Charities. Ms. Torres will be missed. She died at 88. Well, that puts an end to this edition of Abled and On Air. I'm Lauren Seiler.
I'm on the side.
See you next time.